I'm Malia, and let's see, I'm a graduate of St. Olave's Para-College program in 1998. I developed a concentration in arts community activism, and then also studio art. And since then, I've pretty much been doing artist community activism ever since. And I spent about 10 years working with Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mask Theater, as well as other organizations in the Twin Cities, multidisciplinary artist. And yeah, I really approach activism and organizing kind of from a culture shifting perspective. I got very involved with I wasn't at the original planning meetings, but I came to the first day of Occupy and I saw there was brushes that needed washing. So I washed the brushes. And then I talked to someone about consensus and I was like, oh, there's a workshop on consensus, what is that? And because I do a lot of collaborating with people, it seemed really natural to me, like, oh, let's figure out how to collaborate on democracy. So I found a natural affinity for facilitation as an arts teacher, used to getting up in front of groups of people and saying, what's your idea? So, yeah, and like, don't hit each other. And yeah, I really very influenced by Occupy, and I think that it's still alive, and all the people that attended, I think that it kind of spread like mycelium of a mushroom, and it's popping up all over the place. You might not recognize it as Occupy, but it is.
Right.
So, yeah, what else can I say? Currently, I got interested in reinvigorating local government, so I joined my local neighborhood association as a board member, and we're organizing something called the People's Festival for July 4th with a theme of interdependence. We're reclaiming that holiday for celebrating civic engagement, getting a bunch of people with tables to participate. And I'm also part of something with a very similar name called the People's Movement Center, which is focused on healing justice, and it's a bunch of it's a safe space for people of color, queer, trans, indigenous people to give and receive body work and healing and learn things like Tai Chi and yoga and ways to heal ourselves as we do the work of healing our communities.
Cool, thanks. So you mentioned kind of how Occupy is now, how it's still around, even though you don't hear it. This is kind of a question of the group. Could you guys describe what Occupy is now and what it is? I know we talked about this a little bit before the panel started, but just kind of catch everybody up and maybe go a little deeper. You mentioned it was like being a network, so.
I guess I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, we had our initial, encampment downtown Minneapolis, and then we faced a lot of political repression, obviously. It wasn't shown in the media as much, but, essentially politics and police drove us out of there. So after that, what do we do when we don't have a public, gathering place? I feel like because it was such a broad, idea, people kind of got focused a little bit in what part of Occupy they wanted to, get the most involved in. So just this circle alone, you heard 5 different perspectives of things that we're working on. So people kind of found where they want to go afterwards. So after Occupy now, there's all kinds of movements that, started, we had Idle No More sprung up, Black Lives Matter sprung up, Minnesota 350 got its wheels going. There's so many organizations now and now it's more of an online network in that if they're doing something, we all know about it, if they're, so we know about what's going on with a lot of different movements, so it's all kind of the same in a way,
Mm-hmm.
so. And we just keep networking and keep growing and we keep meeting more people, so.
I would add something to that because of the physical reality of occupying, and we were talking about this in the car ride over, sharing food together and getting arrested together, or freezing your asses off together, standing there with cups of cocoa shaking, created bonds that are real, that are transcend the kind of online collectivism, as you call it. There's a way where it exists online, but also really exists a way in our relationships. So now that we're all in our other areas, we still know each other in this way where it's like you really trust each other differently because you've gone through an experience like that together with a better sense of who they are. So it's a whole different quality. I think that things really shifted in ways that we can't even describe because those connections formed.
I think it's important for people to understand that Occupy, as how it started, was a physical occupation where people would physically show up to be present. And while we gathered on like the People's Plaza up in Minneapolis, a lot of times we were working on separate different projects in separate different committees, I should say, or working groups, which kind of, I'd say, led to that spread where people chose to go different paths. And a lot of times it seemed that the working group that they joined would then go and start a different project. And it might not have seemed under the umbrella, especially if they didn't need to go to the GA to get approval and things like that. But a lot of local organizations and efforts definitely started underneath that umbrella and kind of strayed past after we were disallowed to occupy physical public space.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, and even before we were disallowed, actually, things like Free Cooper Union and the student movement and the student loan, issue were coming into the foreground, and, that all sort of came out of the Occupy Wall Street in New York City, and in Canada, and that issue rose up, and it still lives on, today, even though they've cleared the plazas. They did brutally clear people from these plazas. They destroyed our computers. They, would smash your camera equipment, and even mainstream media's camera equipment up in Minneapolis. They knocked the KSTP cameraman's camera out. They deliberately target them at the beginning of any action so that we can't disseminate the pictures because we can reach 40 million people in 45 seconds on the internet. So it was,
Yeah.
so we live still, and the idea is to live in the network, not just on the internet, but in all these pods locally.
Initially, how many people were involved in that Occupy?
The first day we had a couple thousand, didn't we?
The first day, about 3,000 people went in and out. That doesn't necessarily mean they occupied or had a role in helping plan or organize it. I'd say organizer-wise, originally we probably had 100 to 200 individuals who were dedicated toward being on the plaza and helping organize. And eventually, as from the start date, those days rolled on, people would either fall out or have to go back to do something in their own lives.
Yeah.
Whereas also, some new people might come in and be like, what's going on here, and start doing it every day because they live closer or half the time. But I'd say about 100 to 200 during
Yeah.
those first initial days.
There's definitely layers of involvement. Some people were there camping out, and some people would come to the GAs and be part of the discussions. Other people would just drop off blankets.
Yeah, some people just provided materials for
Yeah,
you. Exactly. Some people just cooked for us, some collectives just printed for us. Like the Black Rose, we had a printer collective.
Mhm.
They never came to the plaza, but they supported us and said, anything you want to print, come on over,
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
And Sisters Camelot provided food that, a lot of them didn't come down all the time, but they cooked for us, and then,
Gandhi Mahal.
yeah.
Gandhi Mahal is an
Yeah.
Indian restaurant, right?
Yep.
Up in the area. We had it every day, basically.
I would say there's like two distinct phases, not including where it's at currently, but there was the occupation of the People's Plaza in downtown Minneapolis that got cleared on December 6th, and then we moved to a weekly. We had already started meeting weekly for a potluck gathering. We called it the all-committee meeting at first. So all these different satellite groups would get together once a week with food, potlucks, and then we would discuss what we were doing. That became essentially what Occupy was then. After there was no longer the physical occupation, we would still meet, and that kept going for
A while,
a
yeah.
long time, like more
About
than
a
a
year.
year.
Well,
Yeah,
that
maybe
church
like-
that it happened at
Almost
burned
2
down.
years.
Yeah.
And moved to another
Yeah.
location.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started organizing in a place called Walker Church,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of good organizing going on there, and that was like at the, pardon?
There were a lot of groups there.
There were a
besides
lot of groups there besides us. It was like a lot of activist groups met in this church, and we were using their basement to meet, and then the church burned down.
So during that initial conception of Occupy Minnesota and those meetings afterward, did you feel that there was a general purpose why everyone was there? Was there a kind of, like a underlying theme into all the grievances that people talk about in the different working groups?
Or to say it, you wanna read?
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
read
yeah,
this.
Yeah.
that one.
This is our agreed upon by consensus of over 100 people, I think. This was our
Statement of purpose, if you
statement of
will.
purpose. Do you wanna read it?
I can.
I don't have my contacts on.
Essentially, at the planning meetings, we discussed what our intent was to do down on the plaza. Of course, the declaration of the occupation of New York City was the biggest reason why we were there, and that lists reasons why people chose in New York to hit the streets. But while we, of course, agreed with that, we decided we'd come up with our own kind of Minnesotan theme, which was, we are creating a global, sustainable community that values the health of the earth and its inhabitants over corporate profits. We are a diverse group